How long have you stared at that blank screen trying to figure out how to showcase years of work in a single case study? If you're anything like me, trying to put together your portfolio can feel incredibly overwhelming, even if you do have decades of experience. And whether you're dealing with NDAs, enterprise projects, or even work that never saw the light of day, you're in luck. Get ready for some real, actionable advice that will turn your UX journey into a story worth telling. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome. I am super stoked to have you. Have you picked up your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design, Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes yet? Unlock the secrets of UX success and learn all the things I didn't teach you in school. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/book to learn more. How often do you stare at a blank Figma canvas unsure where to start? This episode is brought to you by Mobbin, the ultimate UI and UX design inspiration library. Mobbin gives you instant access to over 400,000 beautifully designed UI and user flows from apps you love, and content is added weekly, so you never have to start from scratch again. Quickly find exactly what you need, search by app category, UI patterns, or even specific features. My team and I use Mobbin daily at work to find useful patterns, and it helps my team work much more efficiently. And honestly, I can't imagine kicking off a new feature without Mobbin. So ready to level up your design process? Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro today and never run out of inspiration again. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. You can get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then for the love of God, tell your mom and them. So writing case studies, for me at least, is one of the most stressful things I think I do as a UX designer. It's, the pressure's on. You got to get this right. You're not going to get a job if you don't put together this quote unquote perfect portfolio. And so I am so excited to have my good friend Aneta Kmiecik on the show twice now, joining a very exclusive club of other Beyond UX Design two-timers. So Aneta, I am so excited to have you on the show. Ex-architect turned UX designer with 13 years of creative experience and founder of Be Your Own Design Team, where she helps designers navigate their UX careers through her flagship course on UX portfolios. And it's perfect timing, Aneta, because this is something I think so many people are thinking about right now. We got a lot of people getting laid off and they're looking for work. This portfolio thing, for me, incredibly stressful. And so I'm excited to have you come on and talk about it today. How are you? How's it going? Welcome to Beyond UX Design again.
Thank you so much for inviting me the second time. I'm super humbled to be here. So super happy about chatting about portfolios.
Exactly. Well, I am so excited to have you on. And I was practicing before how to say that in Polish and I completely forgot. And so I'm not even going to try.
But you have pronounced my surname very well.
Yeah,
so
I learned last time. Kmiecik. See, the thing is with Polish, there's barely any vowels. So it's like all the consonants in a row. Kmiecik. I guess there's one little vowel in there, but anyway. All right. So let's see. We did the Polish. Cześć, so słychać. Jak się masz, kanapkę. That's all the Polish I know.
We practiced before the show.
Oh, sandwich. I love it. I actually, Duolingo is so funny because like every single language they use like apple and sandwich. And so I know how to say apple and sandwich in like 6 different languages, but that's about it.
But it's still good. You can survive, you can at least order food.
I can at least ask for an apple or a sandwich. That's
right.
All right. So I am so excited to have you on the show today. We're going to talk all about portfolios and how people can keep their portfolios up to date, NDAs, dealing with projects, multi-year projects that get scrapped, all that stuff. But before we get into that, I am very excited to let everybody know that we are going to be doing a live event next week, next Wednesday, May 28th at 9 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central European Time. Listen to the show today, and if you got any questions, hang out with us next week. You can get those questions submitted early at beyonduxdesign.com/events. We'll have a form on there. But before we get into the interview today, Aneta, what kind of things do you want people to talk about? What kind of stuff do you want people to be thinking about and bringing questions to that event next week?
Yeah, good question. We could talk about a variety of topics about UX portfolio. I know we have covered a lot of things about juniors, so I think this is the time to talk about portfolio tips for senior designers, for people who actually have been in the industry for a while and struggle with, showing their work that is under NDA. Or maybe showing the work that is more heavy on the service design work or research design work rather than UI stuff that is super popular for junior designers. We'll also cover maybe some challenges connected with very complex projects that maybe last years and you don't know how to actually tell like a cohesive story that won't be overwhelming. I think these are the things that we will chat about, but I hope people will come with some questions to us. So looking forward to the chat.
Hell yeah, I am so excited. Yeah, and so check out beyonduxdesign.com/events. Again, that's May 28th, 9 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central European Time. Hang out with us, get your questions in early. I'll have a forum on that events page, and we'll be posting those links and everything in the show notes. So, Aneta, portfolios. This is something, it's kind of a nebulous thing. You're going to go online, LinkedIn, and you're going to see just 1,000 different people giving advice on portfolios. And I have to be honest, I think your advice is some of the most solid and actionable and I think worthwhile examples of advice for portfolios out there. So first, thank you for being around and having us learn from you. I think we're all better off for that. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not following Aneta on LinkedIn and Instagram, she posts quite a bit about that. She's also got a newsletter, and we're going to pick her brain today and get some actionable advice on portfolios. So I'm so excited. So last time we had you on, you gave us the background and all that stuff, moving from architecture to UX design. I still think that's such a fascinating move. So if you want to find out more about Aneta, go check out the last episode. I can't even remember. It was a while ago. It was one of the early ones. It was a while ago. So you've now put together a course, and like I said, you have a newsletter. You talk about this all the time. I'm curious, just how did you get into this realm of just understanding portfolios? Did you just have like a terrible experience with your own portfolio, kind of learn from that? Or like, how did you become such a master at putting together portfolios?
Yeah, I'm not so sure if I'm a master, but I'm been spending a lot of time on this topic. I feel like I had a chat before our call with another designer, and I was actually telling him that I think my passion for portfolios came out from pain. So, because, when I was an architect, I had to create a portfolio as well. So I actually spent a lot of time on creating portfolios in those different industries. And in design, it wasn't different initially. I struggled a lot as well, like with understanding, okay, how to explain why, what is storytelling, or like how to brush up my, images, or how to deal with NDAs. But ultimately, when I started helping designers and doing content, I've realized that this topic is quite challenging for many. So I decided to dig deeper, and I basically did a lot of research about this as well. I was helping with hiring manager, but I'm not a hiring manager myself. So I spent a lot of hours, I don't know, more than 1,000, I don't remember, a lot, on chatting with hiring managers, designers, reading and learning about storytelling. And I must say, I also have learned a lot tips from content creation, because I read a lot about storytelling. And I think this contributed a lot to my knowledge and my own portfolio as well. So this is how I came here. And I've been helping designers with those topics for a while. So yeah, here I am. I did this course. I hope I can share as many insights as possible in this short time today.
Hell yeah. I love it. So, one thing that I think is just important for everybody to kind of understand, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, but this is something I tell people a lot is, it's really frustrating, especially people, veteran designers, people who have a long career. We do all the work. We're really good at doing the work. And often when it comes to let's say I get laid off and I need a job. This happened to me in December 2023. I had just years and years of experience and I do all the work, but guess what never actually gets updated? It's the portfolio. And so, all that stuff, it's sort of one of those things where it tends to be that last minute thing that you just don't think about until you need it. And I want to hear your perspective on this, but I'm curious, one of the things the way I like to think about it is, being good at UX design doesn't necessarily mean you're good at putting a case study together. I feel like those are sometimes two different skills. I'm curious your thoughts there. Like, how do you feel about that when you think about veteran designers, especially, and doing really great work, putting that portfolio together? You have any thoughts there? Just like that pain point.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. I feel like probably for a very long time we could deal with any form of a portfolio setup. Like you could send an email at some point. You could just send a share link to your portfolio in any format possible without much storytelling or I don't know, high quality visuals. Sometimes it was through referrals or something like this, right? Whereas right now when the market is very competitive, it's very hard to go through with a mediocre portfolio. And then when people realize, okay, there's actually more to a portfolio than just copying and pasting artifacts or project data, like raw data. I feel like we are lacking skills, which is nothing surprising since we are not writers. If we talk about like UX designer, service designer, I don't know, or other roles like researchers. We are not writers. No one taught us how to write. No one taught us how to use storytelling, what it is. And also many of us actually don't work on those, flashy designs and products, right? Because oftentimes when we go online, check portfolios, we see those beautiful, I also share these portfolios because they're available, but they're flashy, like a lot of animations, micro interactions, whereas there are people coming from, I don't know, enterprise, B2B, I don't know, governmental stuff or other, topics that are on the NDA and then don't have it as well. So then it's the question, okay, how should I make my portfolio stand out? And then they also, of course, struggle with this. So there is no surprise that, we struggle with this at this point, even after being in the industry, because those things are two different things.
Yeah, that's a really good observation too. And something like I've heard you say a few times in posts, I wonder if you could maybe speak to this too, is keeping that work journal as you're doing the work, even it's not necessarily putting case studies together, but just keeping track of the things that you're doing. I wonder if you could just sort of touch on that a little bit, because if you don't have that over the course of 3-4 years, suddenly you need to go put the case study together and you're trying to think back, like, what the hell did I do 3 years ago in this thing?
Yeah, I think that, we all know that this work journaling is super important, but on the other hand, it's so difficult to do it regularly. You are, swamped with your own work and you need to document some shit. It's almost impossible, but it's important because when you, for instance, get laid off, you can, lose access to all your files. You can, it's first of all losing files. Secondly, it's not remembering things. So I always advise folks to just do a bare minimum. So at least save your files regularly and don't note down really key things. I don't know what problem you are right now solving in this project. You don't need to write poems, because ultimately you also don't necessarily need to write case studies, because the portfolio doesn't equal a case study. It can be something else as well. So I think it's more about being aware of, okay, what problem I solved, how I solved it, why I solved it that way, the impact, that's it. And saving files so that you can have the visual representation of what you have done. And what is the solution for this? I mean, I don't know, maybe we will have soon some AI tools that can magically transform our, project information to a beautiful file. You can probably set this up already. I'm probably not aware yet about this, but even a basic stuff I don't know, opening your Google Doc, opening your Apple Notes, opening Notion, whatever tool you will pick, and just throwing those things there in a few bullet points. It's already, you are way ahead of many designers.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely give that advice, and I can't tell you how seldom I actually follow my own advice.
I know how it is.
It gets so overwhelming. But I think that's something to think about. It's like what's the opportunity cost? The way I think about it, at least, is what's the opportunity cost of not doing this?
Yeah.
And, especially if you need a job, you're already stressed out, most likely, you're probably worrying about bills and 1,000 other things. The way I see it is, and again, I need to practice what I preach, but the way I see it is, doing that little thing, it's a pain in the ass right now, but it's going to save you that much, from stress later. Because I hate to say this, but it's only a matter of time before you get laid off.
Yeah.
Our jobs are not safe. Even cushy corporate jobs are not someplace you're going to work for, 20 years and retire. So that idea, I feel like that's so important.
I can maybe give another tip. Maybe you can, I don't know, at least this is my strategy. And I usually advise others to do the same. Like, block time in your calendar, I don't know, on Friday, 9 a.m. for 15 minutes that you will document stuff you have done during this week. That's it. Even if this would be some screenshots, because I sometimes also do this. Like, okay, I don't have like a mental energy to write down anything about the problem myself or whatsoever. I sometimes even like screenshot some stuff for context so that I can pick up something from this later.
That's great advice. Do you have like a way to organize this stuff? Because I mean, after like a year, you've got just lists and things. Is there a way that you like to organize all these things so that later when you come back?
Yeah, I have my I don't know, some folks call it Bragg document, project documentation. That doesn't matter. Anyway, I have a Notion file for this. I am a big Notion file just because it's very close to my way of thinking, as an architect. But I have different categories. I tag, for instance, okay, was it a B2C, B2B project? Was it, I don't know, product to market fit? Was it like SaaS? Was it like I try to categorize those stuff. I always have a column for the problem and I have a separate for user and business problem. And then I also have impact that is also categorized in different columns, like, okay, impact on product, impact on people, on processes, because sometimes you have, I don't know, for instance, exactly, if you're going through difficult work environments, you might have impacted also processes, improved them. And so also these are also things that are worth noting down. If I have time, I have those, notes inside the page of the projects. And I also try to not name the project as it was at work. Like, for instance, if I was working on, I don't know, a checkout project as an example, I usually try to name this file more impactful and insightful so that I can know, okay, for instance, what job to be done it was for a user that I helped with. And I tried to put this title there. But honestly, I think any form of documentation will be fine. Some people don't feel comfortable with this type of more complex setup. So even like a simple thing can be really, really
anything
nice.
Is better than nothing, I think is
right.
Even if you've just got like a mess of just text notes and text files.
Yes.
It's still better than zero. It's still better than absolutely nothing. So, just do it. And, I feel like I'm one of these people that's going to set the Friday thing and just snooze it and just, 6 months in and I'm like, shit, I haven't done this once, It's kind of one of those things. I feel like putting that on there is still a good reminder. And if anything, if you're like me, snoozing that reminder will just make you feel guilty. So that at least 6 months later, you'll do it as opposed to 3 years or never. So I like that advice of giving the stuff. So let's talk about like actually getting in and getting to write the actual case study. I want to get your opinion on this. And this is something that I tell people, and I'm curious if this is maybe the right way to approach it or not. But I often feel like UX designers, especially, will put together a portfolio or case study or website and all the things on their website. And they'll put the things they think they want to see. And they'll put the things that they think other people want to see. But very rarely do we actually treat our own website, case studies, portfolio like any other UX project that we're working on, meaning we don't think about the people using it on the other end, the humans, the actual users. And so we'll design it for ourselves, but we say we're not the user all the time, but when it comes to our case studies, we very rarely think that way. And one of the things that I like to tell people is do your research, understand who your users are, and design your case studies for them and the things they want to see, not the things you think are important. And I'm curious your thoughts there. That's obviously easier said than done because how often do we get an opportunity to actually talk to a recruiter or a hiring manager at the places we want to work? We usually don't get that opportunity, but easier said than done. But I'm curious your thoughts there. Is that something that's actually a reasonable thing to say? Or is that really just really hard to do because you don't get access to those people?
I think that's a very good observation. And at least from what I've researched and have heard from different hiring managers and my own experience with hiring, I think it's very true that we ultimately forget about those users, hiring managers, recruiters, also other people, because sometimes it's also a designer who review a portfolio of, like helping out, or someone else, like even a product manager, depending on the company setup. So we forget about those people, which is very natural because it's like, you kind of, for a very long time, I think we were separating portfolios for like, it was like, okay, whatever, I will put something together, it will be fine. Whereas the market is right now so competitive. That's why I think we have started talking about this. And I think it's in a sense good, because we as UX designers actually should always think about this end user, like, okay, it's not for me. I mean, if I would have to create a portfolio for myself, I would rather prefer to, I don't know, go out and meet with my friends, than putting together this portfolio. So we need to think about a portfolio as a business tool that hiring managers, recruiters, everyone who is involved in the hiring process used to make a decision. And our goal is to actually help them make this decision about us. So we need to provide them all the information they need to make this decision quicker, because if they would do it quicker, it will be easier for them. They will be more fulfilled and happy about how you have set up your portfolio. There is a clear pattern about this portfolio review, right? It's not like, of course, every opinion is different in a sense. It's no surprise. I think sometimes we get frustrated. Oh, everyone is telling those different opinions, right? I think you shared this initially. But basically, every user is different. So, we can't make an impact on this. But we can think about those common patterns that are when you're reviewing your portfolio. Like the initial review, we can already, I think, all know that it's probably very quick if there are so many designers on the market, right? So you need to optimize for time to value. You also need to think of the journey that in which your portfolio goes through. Like, okay, am I sending this portfolio? How? Like, is it attached and available in a resume? Am I sending this for a referral, a DM? Like, you need to think about all those different journeys that hiring managers will have with your portfolio. Also inside your portfolio, like navigation and stuff, right? And then how you provide them this information so that they can quickly make this decision. And ultimately, if someone is sharing a different opinion about the portfolio, I think it's also a very natural thing, because every user is different, right? So if there's one hiring manager hiring for one company and another hiring manager hiring for another company, no surprise that they might have specific different needs, right? So this is something where we can't influence. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that the call out though that, everybody's got different opinions, but at the same time there are sort of universals that you should apply, right? And so
like behavior patterns, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I wonder if you could maybe speak to that a little bit. When it comes to comparing and contrasting the things that should be the same versus the things that might be different. I'm trying to think of how to word this question to make it more specific, because it's so broad. But I'm thinking about this, obviously we're going to talk about some of the universal things in a second. But when it comes to understanding those things, I'm thinking about like industry. For instance, if I'm going into healthcare, I might want to say and do and show certain things versus a commercial, mobile startup or something that's building, commercial apps for the iPhone. So I'm curious, how do you navigate that when it comes to putting a case study together? Do you have any thoughts about how to figure that part out so that you can apply, those things to speak to that specific industry maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole module about this in my portfolio course. It's about strategizing your designer profile. It's how I call it. But I think some people call it designer identity, because you don't have access to those hiring managers. I mean, you can, of course, chat with selected probably, but at some point you probably can't talk with those that will be reviewing your portfolio. You can just, at this stage, probably think about these common behavioral patterns and how the reviewing process can look like. But to make this decision process easier, I think the key is to prepare your portfolio, optimize for time to value. This means that you need to put the most important information for a hiring manager quickly in your portfolio so that they can quickly see it and make this decision and move on. And to know what type of information to put there up front, you need to know yourself first. So you kind of need to also think backwards, you need to reflect on who you are as a designer, what is your experience, and where you want to go next. I think this is often a missing part. Like we think that we need to put together a portfolio from what we have done so far, but we forget about connecting this path with the future. And actually the portfolio informs the future, your next job, not your career, by the way, right? Because you can change it. So that's why we need to update our portfolios when we change. But I think this connection is missing. And in order to find this connection, you need to, first of all, think about, like you said, like a designer, okay, do research. okay, what I have done, what type of projects, can I see any pattern? Like use those UX technique, like, I don't know, affinity mapping, whatever, to find the patterns in you as a designer. Know your skills. I don't know, use some sort of skill mapping exercise. You can Google it. There are those maps that you can check out. You can even take some personality tests if you are super like not aware of who you are, also from this soft skill perspective. And then you need to really think about your next move, because then you will be able, okay, to check, for instance, descriptions of job offers and try to think how I can best communicate my skills so that they can see that I am a good fit for this role.
I love that, like the idea of thinking inward first, and before you can share yourself, you have to know thyself first. I love that. It's very deep. All right, UX fam, it is time for another mid-roll sponsor break. Let's hear it from our sponsor this week, Wix Studio. Okay, web designers, let's talk about the C word, creative burnout. Your client site has real portfolio potential, but between resourcing, feedback, tight budgets, and even tighter deadlines, it just doesn't make the cut. Wix Studio helps close that gap. Built for agencies and enterprises, you can bring your vision to life and keep it alive. With no-code animations, tons of AI tools, reusable design assets, and advanced layout tools. For your next project, check out wixstudio.com. That's wixstudio.com. And now, back to the show. One of the things I want to call out that you said, I love that, I want to maybe dig into this a little bit, but your portfolio and your case studies should not be written to show what you have done. It's to show what you can do and to get that next job. And so I'm thinking off the top of my head, like if I'm an individual contributor and I'm trying to get a lead role, I don't need to necessarily show as much of the tactical, hands-on, work. I want to maybe show more of the strategy and how I delegated or how I led the team to this thing, as opposed to every little tidbit. So, that's really interesting. I've actually been recently talking to several managers who are trying to get back into IC roles because they aren't really happy as managers. They want to get their hands dirty again. And so all their work is sort of like from the manager perspective. And now they putting a manager case study together, talk about how you help solve problems at a very high level, is not going to get you an individual contributor role because people don't necessarily know if you can do that work. And so I love that idea of crafting your case study around the next job, not the one that you have done. So, and that's a really great point. I also want to call out something you just said. It's like, this is for the next job. It doesn't necessarily have to be your entire career. So this is something I think, and I want to get your thoughts here. I have seen so many people, especially people that have had 10 years of experience. I was talking to somebody the other day who had something like 15 or 20 case studies on their website. And to me, like my initial reaction was, God, this is very overwhelming. And, I'd love to get your thoughts here as someone who maybe has been working for 10 years and has done a lot of things. In this case, this person was a contractor. So like almost every 6 months to a year, they were kind of jumping to a new project. So they had all this work, which is great. But I'm curious, when it comes to that next role, what is your advice to people who might have, just too much stuff? It's like the opposite problem of having nothing, but just too much stuff. What is there a way that you can sort of like advise them to pick and choose? Is there a magic number as far as like how many to show? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I love this question about the number. Sometimes designers ask me this and I am like, there's no magic number. I mean, I know that some people give this advice, but I think it's I don't know, I think it's a lie, because there's nothing like one number for number of case studies, because it's you build this with quality. Like you start with quality first and you build on top of those things. And also showing 20 case studies or project stories, or I don't know, whatever you call them. I mean, ask yourself, okay, is this last case study from which year? Is it relevant? Is it still up to date? Does it show the same way of solving problems and possibilities that we have right now? Because tech is very dynamic, that we are seeing this literally right now. So we need to think about the relevance and the timeline as well, and actually prioritize this content. I know that sometimes we are scared that, okay, I even had a chat once with a designer. She told me, but Aneta, I want to show this all because I want to be on the safe side. The problem is that there's no safe side. So you need to take the risk. That's why I always tell designers, you need to become the boss of your portfolio and take this ownership and take this decision and this risk. Okay, maybe this time you will, I don't know, set up a portfolio in this way with this project. maybe it will fail, maybe it will not, I don't know. But the next time you can change. It's not like set in stone, But I think like if you have 20 projects, no one will even go through all of those projects. I've had from hiring managers, these are just raw insights right now, that when they see some of them, that when they see so many projects that they feel like a bit, like, oh, you haven't put the work into like prioritizing. I don't know which project are relevant, or is it like if, like an old portfolio from a few years ago. And, hiring managers don't have time to go through this and check it. You need to provide them upfront. This is who I am. This is what I can do for you. This is what type of value I can deliver. So the best way to do portfolio right now is to actually prioritize your content, because putting this all together, throwing it like a report, it won't work.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about in this example was, taking maybe 3, kind of, I don't know, 3 is sort of a nice round number. People like to round. Or maybe 1, right? And
start from 1.
Yeah, start from 1. And so what we did was we talked about having a hero section where it's like this one's really big, and then beneath that maybe 2 or 3 others that are maybe in like 3 columns underneath that sort of speak to that next job. And then
exactly
from there, like the funny thing is, like as designers, again, this is like we don't think about the usability of our own websites often, Like you don't have to put 1,000 case studies on the homepage. Like you could have, each one could have related case studies, and you could think about the information architecture of your own website. It doesn't have to be like just a list of 1,000 things on there, because it's overwhelming and people aren't going to scroll through it. I love that. Like focus on one first, just focus on the best one. This is something I want to get your opinion here. And I know you're not necessarily a hiring manager, but one of the things that I like to tell people, and I want to know what you think here, but your website, and thinking about the purpose of your website, it's a tool in your toolkit to get a job. There's many different ways that you could get a job. A portfolio is not going to be, or I'll say this, your website is not going to be the reason why someone offers you the job. It's generally there to get your foot in the door, have a conversation, and the interview and the presentation and the deck and the portfolio piece that you go through is going to be what ultimately decides if you get the job or not. And I'm curious, are we overthinking case studies and websites? Are we overthinking these things and seeing like, it's got to be perfect, it's got to have everything, it's got to tell my entire story, otherwise I won't get the job? I kind of feel like a lot of designers, we overthink our own website, thinking it has more weight than it might actually have. And obviously it's important, but it's to get the foot in the door. It's not going to be the ultimate thing. I'm curious what you think. Do you think that's a good way to think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a good observation. But it's also very natural because it's our own product. So we want to create the best one. We want to show ourselves from the best side. And we are really stressed, especially imagine like you've been through this. I've been through this as well, like being laid off and suddenly you don't have anything. So you are super stressed. You don't know what will be next, if you will find a job. So you are like, in this loop and you try to put something together in the best manner. And that's then when you start to overthink. I think it's very natural because you start to panic a bit. On the other hand, if you don't get this foot into the door, you won't get another opportunity. So it's also natural that we stress because of those two reasons. But I think that we overthink in that sense that we are afraid of putting this portfolio out there. Another thing is that we think that the portfolio is a case study, which doesn't necessarily is this. We think that the portfolio is a website, not necessarily. We have these mental models that were built, I think, based on what it has been in the industry. And we try to, I don't know, pass a school test maybe, I don't know. But in a sense, I think there's a truth in this. Whereas we can question this and we can approach this as a designer and we can design this and really think intentionally, okay, do I need to create a website? Like what are my constraints? Do I need these flashy animations? Like all those questions that normally you would ask yourself on the project, on the job. Whereas when you create a portfolio, you panic and you just throw stuff together there and you just follow the crowd. I think this is the biggest problem. So we need to okay, this is my portfolio and I will really think through what I'm putting there. Like really, I'm talking about like the words, the setup, everything, the format.
I love that. All right, so I've got like a ton of tips and tricks and actionable questions about actionable advice and things like that we might not get into today. We could talk about in our live event next week. But one of the things I want to dig in before we get into that is just the things that you're seeing that you wish people would just sort of stop doing. So you mentioned, following the crowd and just hopping on the trends, but that sort of, to me, begs the other question. What else are people doing wrong that you're seeing constantly? Before we get into the stuff that they should do and how they might handle differences, I'm curious, is there just things that you just see constantly and you're just like, oh my God, for the love of Christ, stop doing that?
Yeah, I think the following the crowd covers a lot of those topics. Like, I think this is the first one because we forget to think, we forget to critically think about our own situation because we think that there is a golden formula out there to get this job, right? And the golden formula for creating a portfolio. Whereas there is nothing like this, to be honest, because every designer is different. We are coming from with different experiences. We have different skill sets. We are applying to different roles. And different people are reviewing our portfolios, and we are going through this recruitment process that can have also some differences in the process. So there's no golden formula. That's why it's so important to focus on actually building a clear profile and clear portfolio in a very consumable, time to value way, so that you can actually be seen. Because if you follow the crowd, to answer to your questions, to your question actually, some typical issues that when you follow the crowd are, for instance, doing what you actually shouldn't do in your position, right? Like, for instance, okay, I have those NDAs, I don't know how to show them, or I don't have a visual design skill. Maybe this is a good example, but everyone is doing this flashy, turning around mobile applications on their side, on scroll, parallel, whatever. You need to stop then and think, okay, what should I do next? Like, is it for me? Is it something that will show me for the role I am applying for? This, for instance, of course, not designing your portfolio is a big one. Not thinking about the information architecture that you have actually mentioned. This is a big one, like overcomplicating the navigation in a portfolio, and generally overcomplicating portfolio is a big thing. Like how we set this up, like we pick sometimes some like weird complex templates from those no-code tools, and then we are surprised that we actually don't need all of those things. Sometimes it's just a landing page, Sometimes it's also okay. Maybe you don't even need to have this website. If, for instance, you are short on time, you don't have web design skills, everything is under NDA, so you have a lot to think through. Whereas, for instance, maybe you want to apply tomorrow. So then you need to think about the constraints you have and decide as a designer, what's the best decision in those constraints, like prioritize based on your situation. So I think these are the main issues, like the top level one. Of course, there are some concrete one when it comes to setting up the portfolio, but these are the first one that I've been seeing, I think.
I love that. So something else before we get into some of these tips and tricks you mentioned before, and I want to circle back to this and get your thoughts here. You mentioned something about, well, it might not have to be a case study. You might be able to do other things. When people think about explaining work that they have done in the past and showing it off, they always default to the case study, problem statement, I did this, showing some artifacts, blah, blah, blah. But what are other things that you could use to highlight past work that might not be what we think of as a traditional case study?
Yeah. I think it comes to the thing I've said already, like you need to critically think about your situation and what you need to communicate, and also think about those users. Okay, if they don't have time, if this is this initial, if we talk about this online or this portfolio that you send for like the first touch point, not a case study presentation, it needs to be optimized for a quick scanning. It needs to be very readable. It needs to be optimized for time to value. No one will go through this like in details. Maybe later on in the process, when they are mulling over between two candidates or three, whatever, they can come back to your portfolio. But at this stage, you just want to make an impression and inform hiring manager about your profile. And help them make this decision, right? Answer the questions that they have. So another setup that you might have is, for instance, create a landing page with things that I call in my portfolio calls project snapshots. So these are like short stories about projects, about problems actually that you solved, because another thing is that many times designers think that, okay, portfolio equals case study, a list of case studies. And another misconception is that a case study equals my one work project, and this is also, it can be true in some cases, but if you've been working in complex work environments and product setups, it's not true. Because if you would put your one project after, 2 years in one case study, it's like overwhelming as hell, right? So then you need to break it down. That's why I feel like, okay, maybe one problem. And then based on this problem, you can create a short snapshot about how you solved this project, what you achieved, and give like a visual representation. The visual representation is very important, even if you are a UX researcher or a person who wasn't involved in UI stuff or visual stuff, because it just helps your users, hiring managers, see it quicker and understand it quicker. It's like the scannability thing, a first impression. You can always credit a designer who was responsible for this shot if you are, for instance, a UX researcher, or, like annotate. It's okay to share this stuff. We all do it when, when you write a book, when you create a course. I also link to some stuff that was created not by me. So if you do it, that's okay. But I think this visual and a short, like a snapshot from key information, the problem, the change you made, the transformation, and the impact is the most important. And of course, on top of and how you will set this up, the format, it's already up to you. I think the landing page is enough. It can be a PDF if you are like strict on time. It doesn't need to be a case study. And also another thing is that you can build on top of this. So for instance, for a first iteration, you can create a project snapshot, but maybe tomorrow you can write a case study. And also you need to think, okay, how much proof actually I need to provide to a hiring manager to believe me that I can do it? I think this maybe a question can also help you, because if you are more junior, then it's very difficult to provide more proof, like write this case study, because you don't have an experience. Whereas if you're more senior, you have your resume speaks for itself already. But then you need to provide the snapshot of those projects and problem you solve. And you can elaborate more on this also later on in a case study presentation, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of the snapshot. This is something I was actually talking with a coaching client a couple of weeks ago. She worked at a healthcare company for several years and had, one big product that she worked on, but she had multiple case studies that she broke up. And one of the things that we were kind of playing around with was this idea of a landing page for that product. And so there was a hero case study at the top, and then there were other little case studies at the bottom. And so the idea there is, if she were to be working or applying for a healthcare role, she could send that as, like the landing page for her case studies, because all that work really applies to like another healthcare company. But, she's also applying to some other more tech startups that do more commercial stuff, right? That probably is going to turn them off because it's a lot of desktop stuff. It doesn't really have any mobile. It's not as quote unquote sexy as some of the other stuff she's done. And so we talked about doing, landing page for some of the other mobile apps and the more commercial facing apps that she's done. And so it's like, if I'm applying for that one in the portfolio link, I might put this one and then the other. So she's sort of creating like land, which is very similar to what marketing companies will do. When they have a product, they have the exact same product, the exact same data, but they're selling to 14-year-old boys. They're going to have a landing page that speaks to those 14-year-old boys. And then if they're trying to sell to 60-year-old women, they're going to have a landing page that speaks to 60-year-old women. And they're going to use those different links in different places and send, that marketing journey is going to be very different for those two. But the data is the same. The visuals might even be the same, but the words they use and how they explain it and talk about it are going to be very different. So anyway, that was something we're kind of playing around with. And I love that idea, the snapshot, especially I'm thinking, you've got like a long, maybe a longer case study. You could put a little snapshot up at the top as like a header. And then, you want more information? Fine. Because that's the thing I think about. It's like we often try to just have like a one size fits all thing for a case study, but there's going to be different people viewing it that want different things. So if you can provide them that quick snapshot TLDR at the top, that's enough. But then if somebody wants more information, they can scroll down and read. And you can have an appendix and link to artifacts and things. That doesn't mean you have to necessarily have like every single sticky note that you ever put on a wall for that project in your case study. There are, it's funny because I was actually, back when I was working at GE, we were interviewing for a new role. And me and another guy were doing the panel. We were running the panel to hire. And I specifically said, we were reviewing the case studies, and I said, I just don't I don't need to see like all this information. It's just like kind of information overload. He was like, really? I was like, I read every single sticky note. And I was like, are you serious, dude? You like one? So, it's like even for that same job, two different people that are reviewing the case studies were looking for very different things. And I think that's just like speaks to what you said a second ago, that like everybody that's looking at this is different. And having that sort of one size fits all thing, I think doesn't necessarily work. So thinking about these snapshots and all this stuff, one thing I want to talk about before we get into the tips and tricks, and I don't even know, we might not even have time for specific tips and tricks. We might have to save that for our Q&A. But for platforms, I want to talk about platforms because we could talk about what to put and how to write it and all that stuff, but if you can't get it out there in the world for people to see, right, what's the point? So the platforms, everybody's using like 1,000 different things. I've seen, everything from just PDFs being emailed all the way to like custom built websites and everything in between. If you're like me, old dinosaur, you're still using WordPress, people are using Wix, people are using Framer, people are using Figma, everything in between. I'm curious, like when you think about platforms, what's your advice there? How do you go about giving advice for individuals when they're deciding on how to actually publish this stuff?
Yeah. Okay, very good question. I think I've said a few things about it already. I usually advise people to start from thinking about their situation. Okay, where I am right now, what are my constraints? Do I know how to do web design? Have I ever done any website, even using a no-code tool? Do I want to apply tomorrow? Do I have anything? Have I written already some stories? Do I have those snapshots? Do I know my elevator pitch, like my profile? You need to work within your constraints to make this decision about the tool that you will be using, because the tool, until it's user-friendly, up until it's accessible and available for hiring manager, it's okay. I think it doesn't matter. Of course, the problem starts when you select a tool that you can't handle and that it creates a very clunky experience and it actually makes an issue for a hiring manager to review your portfolio quickly. Then the platform can cause some issues. But initially, I think you need to start with asking yourself those questions that I already told you, right? Like, okay, can I do it? Like, for instance, once in my career, okay, maybe it was more actually, but I remember once I saw a job offer, I think it was Friday, and the deadline for application was on Monday. As you can guess, I didn't have any portfolio, like at least not updated. I think I had like a PDF version. So I had to decide, okay, I'm going to right now put together my website and like stress over some like interface things in this platform, or will I focus on telling my story and actually delivering my portfolio to try it out if I get this interview? So this is how you make those decisions. I don't know if I should recommend any concrete platform if you actually want to do your website. I have my preferences and I know how it looks like in general, but I think if you feel comfortable working in WordPress, it's probably okay for you if the experience is right. The experience is okay. But if you're just starting out, there are some few that are probably easier to start with, like based on that you are a designer, there are some patterns how we work.
That's I love that. Yeah, because like what I usually tell people too is like do whatever you feel comfortable with. Like if it's a custom built website and you feel like you can knock that out and it's not extra stress on you, do that. If you are more comfortable with Wix, if you're more comfortable with WordPress or anything else, like use that. The thing that I advise people not to do is like don't go and like try to learn a new platform and then get stuck and then not be able to update it because you couldn't figure out how to do it or it didn't do the thing you wanted it to do. So, just use the one that you're comfortable with and the one that you can actually, materialize the thing that you visualized in your head. If you can't make it look or function the way that you want it to, don't use that platform. Maybe Wix is the perfect opportunity for you. Shout out to our sponsor Wix. But if you want to use another tool that works for you, I would say just do whatever you feel comfortable. It's not going to add extra stress to your already stressful job hunt. I think that's maybe the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you will not apply, right? That's why, for instance, in my story, I selected PDF format because I really wanted to focus on actually telling the story and putting my visuals together rather than figuring out, okay, where is this website? How should I do it? And if you want, for instance, to super customize your portfolio to a position, then a website can be also a bit challenging, right? Because you have one version. What should you do? Then if you have a PDF or other format that is more easily to share with different links or documents, then you can customize, right? And change it easily. So you need to think about all those things. Yeah.
I love that. One thing I've seen recently, and I want to get your thoughts about a specific platform. You mentioned Notion. You were a huge Notion fan. I started to see people do Notion portfolios, and I'm curious, how do you feel about Notion? I mean, it's not customizable from like a visual perspective, but it's pretty powerful, and you can, build stuff and cross-link things and databases and use it. Is that something you've explored? I'm curious what you think.
I love using Notion for, I don't know, my second brain, organizing, planning, this type of things. I know that the tool has been on the market for a while, also picking up by designers for portfolios. But I must say, I wouldn't say it's the best tool for a portfolio. It has a lot of limitations when it comes to customization, how you, I don't know, organize your text and visuals. And if you forget about this and you just throw everything there, it also can look like so-so. Although, of course, it's very easy to share. But I would probably, if I would have to pick between Notion and PDF, I would still pick a PDF because I can design this better. And if you, for instance, don't have visual skills, Notion, I don't know, you need to remember to have the proper length of sentences, not, and people forget about this. Or if you put your case studies or project stories into this database gallery, also make sure to make them bigger because usually people forget and they are so small. Also, the image is usually cut in this preview. Of course, it's very easy to scan in a sense because it's like a very notes-taking thing, right? Because you write and it's very top-down, but it's not very easy to customize. And I'm not so sure if it creates the best experience, to be honest.
Okay. No, that's fair. I that's good to hear because there's, I think, a lot of people out there that are considering Notion for that. And, I think it's good to know the limitations and understand what you can and can't do and all that stuff. That said, if Notion is what you want to do and that's what you feel comfortable, I'm sure you would probably agree, use Notion, go for it. If you can get it to do the way you want it to do it,
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have skills, you also will, make a crap in a PDF. So that's the case as well. So I think you need to verify it yourself. That's what I've been at least observing when I saw portfolios from Notion, that those nitty-gritties that actually don't provide the high experience. But if you can take care of those things for readability, for scannability, it's of course okay. I mean, you can share it easily, right? You don't need to think about some PDF size, format, whatever, right? This is actually very handy.
I love it. All right. So we have got about 20 more minutes before our time is up today. And I've already had you for a long time. There is a whole lot of stuff here that we have not covered, specifically around actionable advice on things like that. But we're going to be doing our live event next week. And so I think we'll probably cover quite a bit there. How do you feel about that? Are you okay if we leave a lot of that stuff for the live event? Would that be all right
Yeah,
with you?
absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. So before we get out of here, last time we did 5 questions that I ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. You've already answered those. So this time around, I've got a bunch of silly this or that questions that I'm going to ask you. But before we do that, any closing thoughts, anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to dig into?
Yeah, I think maybe the closing thought would be to be your own boss of your portfolio. I think this is something I tend to repeat quite often to designers because we lack confidence. We tend to follow the crowd and we need to start believing in ourselves and becoming more self-aware because it will not only help us with a portfolio in a recruitment process, but I think in general in our careers. How we will be navigating this career, which is no longer linear right now, right? So I think don't be afraid to take risk with your portfolio and put yourself out there. Don't think that portfolios are perfect because they are not. If you would look closely into those beautiful portfolios online, you will for sure notice also some things that are not in place or things that you, for instance, don't like or maybe have a different opinion on, which is really normal. So be brave to put it together and maintain it.
I love it. All right, Aneta, this has been an amazing conversation. It resonates with me so much too, because like I said, I have been working in enterprise for a long time, almost 10 years, working on very similar projects, almost the same project for a lot of those years. And so this kind of stuff, it just resonates with me so much and I love it. Before we get out of here though, I've got some silly this or that questions that I want to ask you. Last time you were on, we asked you those 5 questions, favorite book, all stuff. We already heard all that. Now we're going to want to dig into some other stuff and get to know you even better than we already do. But before we do that, let's give a shout out to our live event. We're going to be hanging out live next Wednesday May 28th, 9 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central European Time. You can get more info at beyonduxdesign.com/events. There's a form on that page. You can submit questions early. So listen to everything we talked about today. I'm sure you've got 1,000 questions, million questions. That's great, because now you get to ask Aneta all about those questions that you have from the show today. So you get those questions in early. Before we get into those this or that questions, what are some things, again, that you want people to ask, submit questions about, and get that conversation going next week?
Absolutely. So we have covered a lot of things about junior portfolio. There are a lot of tips about this online. So I think it's a high time to talk about portfolio tips for more senior designers. Let's maybe talk about tips for designers who work on service design, research staff, who maybe been in the industry for years and has been working on some projects for a long time and they don't know how to break them down into a compelling story. We'll talk about NDAs probably as well. Some tips and tricks for how to showcase maybe complex visuals from your projects, like, I don't know, complex customer journey maps. And all of this that would be relevant for seniors and folks who also want to create a good first impression in their portfolio, but don't have maybe so many flashy UI designs. So yeah, this episode will be probably for you.
Hell yeah, I am so excited. One more time, beyonduxdesign.com/events, May 28th, 9 a.m. Eastern. Get those questions in early. I am so excited to hang out with you, Aneta. It's going to be a dang old hoot.
Likewise.
All right, awesome. Well, I am really excited about our live event. Before we get out of here, like I said, I got some really silly this or that questions. What I normally do is ask the Q&A 5 questions, and then on the live event, when I have people come on the live event, I ask them the this or that questions. This time I'm asking you this or that questions because you came on again. So I don't know what we're going to do for the live. I think actually for the live, we probably won't do anything because I feel like we'll have so many questions about portfolios that will take up the whole time. So maybe it's good that I'm asking you these this or that questions now. All right. So I've got just 20 simple this or that questions. The first thing that comes to your mind, don't think too hard about it. You don't have to justify it. Just whatever you think. And then that's it. All right. First up, time travel to the past or to the future?
To the future.
Invisibility cloak or the ability to fly?
Be able to fly.
Be able to fly. Yeah, I think so too. I feel like a cloak would be cool, but like I could just fly to wherever I want. Like that'd be like amazing. Right.
And look, from above and see what's going on there.
Oh man, that'd be amazing, huh? All right. Space travel or deep sea exploration? Which would you rather?
Deep sea exploration. I am the water girly.
You like the water? See, either one I feel like is terrifying for me. Like the idea of being on a submarine scares the crap out of me. Not because it's like a small space, but because like at any point it could just crush me and I would die. But like even in space, same kind of thing, like tiny little crack, boom, dead. So I don't know. Either one just sort of terrifies me. I'm not sure. I'd rather just like safe and sound on the ground. That's where I'd like to be. I don't know. All right. Would you rather be a famous director or a famous actor? Front of the screen or behind the scene?
Oh, Jesus. A famous actor.
Famous actor. All right. You're okay with like all the autographs and things like that? Hassled constantly? That's all right. I think you could do it. All right. Would you rather only eat pizza for a year, every meal, nonstop, 3 meals a day, or never eat pizza again?
Oh, no. I love gluten. That's a tricky question.
Because here's the thing. After a year of pizza, 3 meals a day, you'd probably never want to eat pizza again. So either way, you'd probably...
true.
It's a hard one.
Okay. If I would have to answer to this question from a rational point of view, probably no pizza at all.
Yeah. You'd also gain a lot of weight. I feel like you would probably be miserable if it had you. It kind of ruins it. This is a hard question. Either way, I feel like you're out of luck. All right.
Yeah.
Would you rather live in a world without coffee or a world without music?
Oh, no. That's a very hard trade of decisions, Jeremy. A world without coffee.
Yeah. Music either one would kill me. I feel like
me too.
I would just start drinking tea or something. I don't know. Find something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to have it's I don't know. Because like it's not just the coffee, it's the act of going to a coffee shop and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a whole ceremony.
Yeah, it's a ceremony. Yeah, well, that's a great way to put it. All right. Would you rather have the ability to read minds or be invisible?
Read minds.
All right. Would you rather have a rewind button or a pause button?
Yeah, pause button.
Yeah, that one, I feel like, did you ever watch Saved by the Bell? Was that big in Poland when you were a kid?
No.
It's an American show. Anyway, it was like a kid's show basically, but it was like a sitcom and the lead character had this thing he could just be like time out and he could just pause and just like talk and walk around and stuff. Anyway, that question always makes me think of Saved by the Bell. All right. Would you rather be perpetually underdressed or perpetually overdressed?
Ooh.
Underdressed for everything or overdressed for everything?
Oh, okay. Oh, I think, I don't know. Yeah, I think in both cases you will be noticed, like, so maybe overdressed, because sometimes I find it hard to make decisions when what type of clothes.
Yeah, this question is so funny. Like, I just imagine someone showing up to if I don't know, like the Queen's coronation in like t-shirt and shorts or something, but like also at the same time, like just showing up like everywhere in like a ball gown, like a fancy hat or something. Just no matter where you go, you're just, I don't know, I love that. I don't know. I think it's hilarious to think about. That would make like a really funny movie, or somebody should make that movie. All right. Would you rather design only with Comic Sans or design only with papyrus for the rest of your life?
I knew you would ask about papyrus. I think the second. Because it's like Comic Sans, it's still like meh, but papyrus has some like something in it. It has more character, I think. So the second.
I love it. Everybody would think you're like from ancient Egypt forever.
Yeah.
All right. Would you rather only be able to conduct user research via interpretive dance or haiku poems?
What? What?
Haiku, like 3-line poems.
I know the Japanese one. Haiku. Yeah. Okay, yeah. The second one.
Haiku poems. Now,
yeah, I'm a big fan of Japan. I lived in Japan,
That's right. Yeah, so it's funny. I just imagine this one. Like, I don't know. Like, I need to refine this a little bit more. But it's either like you as a researcher doing the interpretive dance, asking questions, or the participant giving you like responses in haiku poems, or only responding, or is it both where you have to have a haiku poem and they have to repeat, answer your question in a haiku poem? I did some research before, like I found a website that has like a bunch of UX haiku poems.
Really?
And it's like,
ooh, I need to.
Really funny. Yeah, here, you want to read one? This one's really funny. All right. This is by Edward Liu, by the way. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But empathy, delight, buzzwords that aren't applied when working with colleagues. I love it. Haiku poems. I just imagine like doing an entire research session in haiku poems.
Yeah, this would be hilarious.
All right. Next, this is the last question. Would you rather have your designs critiqued by Gordon Ramsay or Simon Cowell?
Yeah, I know.
Both very mean.
But I'm from Poland. I can handle quite a bit,
That's true. You can handle. Yeah, that's true.
You know what my mom told me when I was a kid?
That is true.
I think the first one, Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay. I can just imagine him like throwing his laptop across the room, like, this is garbage, this is trash, like in his like face red, veins popping out of his head.
Chill, mate.
All right. Yeah, Simon Cowell's just like mean, but like in a very dry way, Yes. Gordon Ramsay at least is like very animated.
Yeah, very like dynamic, yeah.
Yeah, although I actually have asked somebody this and they mentioned that Gordon Ramsay actually is like very nice on the kids show. He's like very like warm and like helpful and stuff. He's not at all like Hell's Kitchen mean, like threatening to kill someone with a kitchen knife. So anyway, I don't think he's ever done that, by the way. All right, Aneta, this has been amazing. Before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you. Give yourself a plug. Where can we find you online and your course and your newsletter and all that stuff?
First of all, thank you for having me a second time. It's always a pleasure to be here in your show. I always recommend your show to everyone. It's one of my favorite UX podcasts, just honestly saying this. You can find me, first of all, on LinkedIn with my name and my Polish surname, Aneta Kmiecik. Secondly, of course, on Instagram, ux.aneta. You can also check out my portfolio course, uxportfolio.co. And yeah, I also have a newsletter, which I sometimes write, sometimes not. I don't spam, that's what I wanted to say. It's Be Your Own Design Team. So yeah, these are all the places where you can find me.
I love it. Aneta, thank you so much for coming on again. And remember, don't forget to hang out with us next week live. It's going to be a dang old hoot. Get your questions in at beyonduxdesign.com/events. Aneta, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, all right, y'all. That's it for Aneta and me for today. I hope we helped to shed a little bit more light on how to craft that quote-unquote perfect portfolio. Remember, it doesn't matter how long you've been working. Portfolios can be incredibly overwhelming and incredibly stressful to put together, even if you've got decades of experience. But I'm curious, have you put any of these things to practice, and has it helped you land a job? Has it helped you be more confident, at least, about putting a case study together for your portfolio? Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would love it if you left a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, then why don't you tell them about it? That would be fantastic. Don't forget to check out the Beyond UX Design shop. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop to pick up some big, beautiful UX-themed art prints and digital downloads you can print yourself. Grab your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design. Master your craft beyond pixels and prototypes. Get free shipping on all U.S. orders over $30 and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Just head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/shop and get your print on. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Sarah, Quan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, Zoe, and many others, and help keep the show independent and ad-free. You'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. Get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And if you're tired of staring at a blank Figma canvas, Mobbin gives you access to over 400,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows with a library that grows bigger every week. So kickstart your creativity, streamline your workflow, and level up your design process. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and never run out of inspiration again. Remember to sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes along with all the show notes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all. Jak się masz?
Well done. Co słychać, jak się masz? Chcę kanapkę.
Yeah, that's it. I'm eating a sandwich, and
That's it.
that's it. I don't even know how to say I'm eating a sandwich. I just know how to say sandwich.